Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the first plenary session of the 7th ILM International PRME Conference on Innovations for Sustainable Business. The first session is on jobs and opportunities in sustainable business, aligned with Sustainable Development Goal 8, which reads, Decent Work and Economic Growth. It is my privilege to welcome the session chair, Sri Raj Nehru, Honorable Vice Chancellor Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, Haryana, specialized in leadership and team management from Columbia University. Sri Nehru has over 30 years of corporate experience. He is a strategic thinker and an action-oriented HR professional in designing and delivering strong human resources. With excellent leadership skill, he has also left his mark in consulting and project management. Welcome, sir. Moving to the first speaker. Moving to the first speaker of the session, Mr. Rajdeep Sehrawat, Director Consulting Deloitte. With 26 years of global experience in both public and private sector, Mr. Sehrawat has worked at the highest level of Indian government, including the Prime Minister's office, proficient in managing teams in a cross-cultural environment. He has also worked across markets around the world. Mr. Sehrawat is an industry expert with experience in top consulting organizations and an alumnus of Faculty of Management Studies. Welcome, sir. Introducing our next speaker, Mr. Abhay Kapoor, Senior HR Leader, Amazon. He has 27 years of experience in human resource management and employee relations in diverse sectors, including e-commerce, automobiles, engineering, and IT. He is certified Six Sigma Green Belt and job evaluation by HAY, and also a certified trainer by ILO. He has led projects on organizational design and change, competency framework, restructuring and outsourcing. Welcome, sir. Our next speaker is Ms. Aarti Mittal, Global Operations Lead at Accenture, an experienced IT professional with over 20 years of experience. Ms. Aarti has handled assignments involving all stages of project lifecycle, including business development, research and development, and project management. She has operated on consultancy assignments, primarily in healthcare, transportation, and manufacturing industries. She is also an ILM alumna. Welcome, Ms. Mittal. Now I request Professor Saurabh to take it forward.
Thank you, Professor Shamli. We are indeed very honored and privileged to have such an illustrious panel amongst us here today. In fact, each of the panel members represent market leadership in their segment. This session's theme is very apt for an emerging top business school, and especially in 2020, when there is an unprecedented pace of change in jobs and opportunities in the 21st century. Especially with the evolution of new technologies, AI, ML, blockchain, automation, robotics, and this is something which the entire audience wants to hear more. There are several challenges which the business is facing, especially with the sustainability mission. And I'm sure this also gives an opportunity for new areas to emerge, which will require the new thinkers, the new managers, to actually think with new skill sets and new mindsets in the times to come. I'm sure the audience is waiting to hear from the panelists, and without further ado, I would now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor Sri Raj Nehru to begin the proceedings of the session. Sir.
First of all, I must congratulate IILM for organizing this brilliant program, given that this is becoming one of the most important agenda item for the entire world today. We have some great speakers today, but before I start inviting the speakers, I was wondering, it was making me feel, when we were small children, I remember we always used to be told by our parents, especially in India, especially the places I belong to, that in Kashmir, I belong to Kashmir, and we used to have so many springs in Kashmir. And I used to remember that my father, my grandfather would always take us to that spring and will make us to, behave in a way which is more compliant to nature by making us to worship the surroundings of that spring. I would always ask him, why are we worshipping the spring? It's a small spring and water comes out of it. They said there is a God which is, hidden or which is lying inside the spring. So I didn't recognize the reasons for that until I read about our ancient culture, our value system that the India always talked about. And I realized that this wonderful part of the world had always personified various energies in the nature. You see, we have a God personified for earth, we have a God personified for air, Vayu, or animals, or trees, plants. Everywhere, the personification was done in the form of a deity or a God. So I was always wondering, why did we personify them? Until I reached a little deeper and found in Vedas or in Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda, consistently, all these Vedas have been telling us that these energies are important for the survival of this planet. And if there is an imbalance in these energies, there can be a devastation to this planet. And that is where the entire value system, right from the day when a child was born and sent to the Gurukul, the initial education was focused on helping him to be associated with nature. You might have seen in India, we used to have forest schools, forest universities. In jungles, the sages would open their schools. The children were taken to the school because they were made to get connected to the nature, understand their relationship with the nature, how they are part of that nature, and what is their role and responsibility in protecting that nature. That was the fundamental education. And from there emerged later the bigger parts of the life management skills and other things, so that whatever you do in life, the grounded principle is that whatever you do, it has to be in conformance with the nature. No action of yours should be violative of any nature. That is why we worship trees, we worship rivers, we worship streams, we worship plants, and we worshipped each other. We called Aham Brahmasi. We said, you are the God, I am the God. So we are all, I am in you and you are in me. And that was the philosophy which drove us. And that philosophy made India one of the most economically progressive societies. If you recall and read Angus Maddison, 1st century AD, his research which he did for the British, they found that around the world, India in the 1st century AD had 35% of the GDP. Unfortunately, today we are 6 to 7% of the total world GDP. So something was happening, and the societies were clean, societies were progressive. So unfortunately today, the situation has come to an extent where sustainability is being discussed as a part of our survival, as a part of career. But that is the irony, the way the entire world has been driven towards achieving profits, achieving certain physical comforts, at the cost of violating certain basic principles of nature, somewhere this has created problems for the entire world. So I will not go into it. I think we have some brilliant speakers today, because now that the sustainability is throwing careers, it's throwing opportunities, and it's also putting so much of demand today among our education system, that how our education needs to relook and put into certain leadership skills, certain behavioral skills, certain domain skills, so that people who now come out of the education institutions, they can make the coming world, the coming business more sustainable and more aligned to the society. So in that, we have today with us Rajdeep Sehrawat from Deloitte, and I think I was talking to him, he has some fabulous thought processes on how technology today is becoming an enabler of driving sustainability. And I'm sure the points that he was bringing out when I was asking him that careers in sustainability, I realized he actually meant every career has to be sustainable. So it's not about careers in sustainability, it's about sustainable careers. So I'm inviting him to come and share his thoughts with the audience. Thank you.
So let me start by sharing two very interesting data points with you, because I believe these two data points reflect how a very fundamental shift is happening in which how businesses will run in the near future and probably a little ahead in the future. So recently there was a World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, which I think many of you would be familiar with. It is an annual event where sort of leading business heads, policymakers, heads of government sort of get together for 2-3 days, and they break the ice, think of new things, discuss what's happening in the world, etc. So there was, annually the World Economic Forum releases a report called as the Global Risk Report. They basically identify what is this so-called collection of policymakers, business heads, what are the risks they are seeing as part of the next year or 2 years. Interestingly, the top 5 risks, so they identified 10 risks which are likely to happen. Out of the top 10 risks they identified, top 5 related to climate change, which is, across the climate change spectrum, biodiversity, water, etc., etc. And then they the report looks at what is the impact of these risks on business as usual. So out of the 10 impacts, out of the top 5, 4 were related to climate change. So, and the report is available on the WF website. I urge you to read it. It's a very nice and easily readable report. So the point I'm making is that climate change has moved away from something nice to do to something which is mandatory now, right? From a fashionable thing you do after 5 o'clock when you've done your business as usual, it is now becoming a imperative for surviving and thriving in the world in the next few years, right? Now, so the other thing which I was talking to Dr. Nehru earlier was that I think we need to break the silos between sustainability and business. There is no concept of sustainability and business as usual. You can't do something for 1 or 2 hours in a day as CSR, and rest of the day you keep on doing business as usual, right? So sustainability and business will converge, and your businesses will have to become sustainable, not something you do as a CSR, right? And the other fundamental shift which is happening is that your generation, and I'm not talking about the first row, after the first row, so the younger generation, right, is now becoming very socially aware. So recently, some of you would have read that Google employees forced Google to withdraw from a US Department of Defense project about using drones and artificial intelligence for launching unmanned weapons, right? It was a very lucrative contract, but the employees sort of wrote letter after letter to the Google board that this is not the ethical thing to do, right? So more and more, the millennial generation and the generation beyond you is going to force corporations to change the way they behave. So if a corporation is looked upon as environmentally non-friendly, I think some of you may not even like to join there. So that behavioral change is also altering the way corporate leadership is looking at sustainable businesses, right? Now, when we look at sustainable businesses, and let's now move away from sustainability as a pilot project to scalability. Because it's very, there's a saying that India is a grave, and I'll talk more about India because that's the country we live in. There was in a light vein, we used to say that India is a graveyard of successful projects, pilots. We do pilots, but then somewhere we fail in scaling it up, right? And I think if businesses have to become sustainable and do the right thing, technology enablement has to move away from doing these, small pilots, and how do you scale it up? So there is a value chain which will happen. For example, let's take the case of agriculture. Now, we all read that water is a scarcity, and there is this, AK-47 kind of an approach on fertilizer distribution in fields. Now, precision agriculture, where you marry drones with artificial intelligence, with autonomous vehicles, this is a very nice thing to do. You can do it in a 1-acre field. But when you start looking at hundreds and thousands of acres at a scale, then you have to work on imagine a job or a value chain where somebody will create the technology, somebody will take that technology from the lab to the market and do a pilot. Somebody will do that scalability of that pilot into a, what you call from 1-acre fields to hundreds of thousands. So there will be a plethora of jobs get created, right? And I think this whole anxiety, which is unfortunately getting spread in the community, that jobs will disappear. I think jobs will change. They will not disappear. So this anxiety has to become, you have to move away from a mindset of anxiety to a mindset of abundance, right? Agriculture will probably become one of the sexiest areas for us to work. Today we look at it as, गाँव वाले काम करते हैं. But tomorrow it will become a heavily technology-fueled business. So there will be huge jobs created in agriculture itself. And when we say agriculture, we are not talking about, just the field work. How do you create a kind of a dematerialized chain from the farm to the shop, to the store? So you will use technologies like blockchain. Today, when you buy a fruit from the mother dairy or wherever, you don't know where that fruit has come from. But imagine if you could create a kind of a blockchain-based system where you can trace the provenance of the fruit right down to where it is originated from, right? So what I'm saying is jobs will get created, and I think it's a very exciting time in our life that technology has moved away from something the IT department did in a data center to our everyday lives. And let me give you an example. All of you have applied for passports, and it's a very straightforward example. But passport has moved away from a paper-intensive process to a relatively paperless process, right? And this is also a way of a sustainable citizen service delivery. You have saved papers, and I was talking to my ex-colleagues in TCS, and their estimate was that nearly 5 million trees worth of paper has been saved in the last 3 years. Now, that's a phenomenal statistics for one citizen service delivery process. More and more we move away from paper-driven to paperless, these impacts will start happening. And now one question which people ask is this going to be a technology-driven job environment where unless I'm a technologist, I will not have a job? But please do remember, people will create technology and there will be people who will use technology. And there is an abundance of jobs for everybody. The only thing you need to remember is you have to be in a mindset of continuously learning. So I'm not, when I say, and I keep on using this term, it's technology, artificial intelligence. No, all of us don't have to write algorithms for artificial intelligence. But we must have a basic understanding, because AI will underpin our jobs. It's probably the most significant technology imperative happening today. And healthcare, agriculture, insurance, everything will be driven by AI. So please, as MBA students, develop an understanding of what AI can do. You don't have to write the algorithm, like I said, but have that mindset that you shouldn't create these boundaries that somebody will do it. You must develop this continuous, what I call lifelong skill, is not a nice phrase. It has to be part of your DNA as students and as professionals. 10 years back, what I did in my life is not even relevant. When I started working in 1990, I was writing software on mainframes, where I actually used to write on paper and somebody used to then punch it in. Today I'm doing courses on Coursera and AI. So that's the way I will survive and grow in my career, right? And the other thing against for students is, please don't treat yourself as victims. You are not victims. You have the capabilities, you have the access to knowledge. Please reach out. Don't blame your teacher, don't blame your institute, they didn't teach me. Please reach out to online, right? Nobody stops you. I mean, see one movie less a week. Spend that 3 hours doing something learning. I think that's the way you'll survive and thrive in this world. Status quo is not an option. Change is the only constant you're going to have. So my urging to you is, please look at the world of future as a world of abundance, not as a world of scarcity. And then you will, because if you go with an anxiety mindset, you will be nervous and depressed. So there's a whole world opening in jobs. Nobody can predict what jobs will be there. There will be disruption, but disruption in a positive way, not in a negative way. Right? Jobs will not disappear, jobs will get created. Are you ready to handle those jobs? That is the question you need to ask yourself. Not somebody will give you a job, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Rajdeep. I think you brought some brilliant points, especially talking about the climate change. Since humans have started experiencing the heat, I don't mean the heat of the climate, but the heat of the life. I think in every field, humans have started recognizing the need of doing something. I think when you were talking about the millennials and their role, especially the Google example, that's a brilliant example, that how they forced the corporate to rethink about what they are trying to do. It reminded me there are many projects today and the opportunities that are emerging. For example, IBM has a project, they call it Farm to Fork. And this Farm to Fork is for smarter agriculture, smarter food, where they are trying to find out how a food moves from the farm and until it reaches to the fork, it means to the table of the person who is consuming it. What is the entire value chain it passes through, the supply chain it passes through, and how they can protect it. And there are various skill sets required that today people will have to learn and then go and work in the companies. Similarly, I found very recently in Himachal, there's a team from IIT, what they did. There are many landslides that take so many lives, and because that has been a growing problem because of too much of deforestation. So the IIT teams, they were now working on a project where they can use the GIS and predict in advance that which areas will have the highest possibility of a landslide coming in, how much of time, so that they can in advance inform the people. So I think there are phenomenal opportunities that will emerge in coming days. It all depends on the students, and it reminds me what you said, that today the education has not to be linear. It has to be a little horizontal, which means students will have to do interdisciplinary studies. So when you enter into the organization, you are no more HR only. There has to be marketing, there has to be finance, there has to be some other aspects. So a student has to have a multi-dimensional approach. So thank you very much. I think you brought some wonderful insights. Now I'm requesting Abhay from Amazon. So Abhay, I think you have been talking about, we heard the opportunities from Rajdeep. You have been talking about the young generation and all that they need to learn and embrace to make their advancements in their career, and how that can be linked to sustainability. So it would be great if you can share some of your thoughts on that.
Good morning, everybody, and the people on the dais, and the learned audience. I think it is a very right time to talk about a topic which is concerning everybody. I'm largely coming from the industry background. I see the heat of this topic getting more and more in the corporate sector. And somewhere I do link it with a lot of industrial revolution, maybe the industry 4.0, which is moving a lot of processes from mechanized and electronic processes to the more digitized process. And that definitely supports this movement of sustainability in current environment. We all know that this sustainability have three different pillars. One is attached to a lot of social innovations, second to your economic development, and third is to environment. When we think about having jobs and opportunities in sustainable business, I think there's a lot of scope and I see a lot of synergy between what the millennial generation having the maximum occupancy in this room, what they think and what their thought process is and how they can contribute towards this objective. Before we talk what they actually look forward, we see that there's a young generation. They are more sensitive towards the environment. They are more sensitive towards the future, and they have a lot of access to the internet. They have a lot of access to the social media, and we need not to tell that how the world looks like 100 years back or 200 years back, but they are aware, and like he rightly said that there is a lot of insecurities are being created, that resources are going to end and this is going to happen, how the young generation or the coming generations will be able to live and sustain if we don't do something about the sustainability today. So I feel that there's a lot of jobs and opportunities available for this young generation who are very enthusiastic, who are more apt towards innovative solutions, who feel that there's a lot of opportunities in terms of creating a career there. With a lot of industrial revolution which is happening, I think opportunities are going to increase day by day. It's not only the traditional jobs of having a environment, health and safety officer or having a facility manager, but today there's a lot of scope in each and every process when we design, when we set up a new plant, when we set up a new unit, when we set up a new building. There's a lot of talk which happens around making a green environment, green building, and right from the design stage, there are many jobs which are evolving, which requires a lot of competencies and expertise in these areas. So before somebody decides to make a career in this new dimensions which are coming up, you need to remember 10 things. Okay, so which are those 10 things, like which social area you want to build, specialize in, whether in things related to more human and people, or things which are more related to the economic development, or things which are more relevant to the environmental development. Identify your market, which market area you feel that it could be more relevant to your passion, your skills which you are acquiring. There's lack of courses available on this particular topic, but this is the beauty of sustainable business, that any expertise, whichever area of specialization you are working on, that knowledge, that skills will be always useful for creating a sustainable environment in any kind of industry. Then how you create your skills, how you make your skills, how you build your skills for these sustainable businesses. Use the right resources. So start equipping yourself with the right resources right from the beginning, gain some field experience. Because until and unless you get into the field and understand that what are the problems which we are focusing, without that you cannot become the expert, or you cannot become the solution provider. Create a business case, and that business case will help you in making some kind of progress in creating that job for yourself. Finding out the reasonable resources, reasonable expectations, and since this is a new field, you need to have a lot of patience in terms of timings, do proper research, and do something which can really impact the business and society. Creating a lot of awareness, you have to practice sustainability. Like, for example, like start using a lot of organic products rather than this, so that there's a mindset which you need to align with the sustainable environment. Without having that kind of mindset, it becomes very difficult to just showcase that, yes, you are that kind of a person who will care for sustainable and find out the job in that market. And be curious for the new developments. Have a lot of research on that. Jobs are going to be there in each and every aspect. Like, we need a lot of marketers for creating this kind of awareness. We need a lot of people who have operational efficiencies and operational sustainability. We need a lot of people who can innovate. We also need a lot of people on data analytics who can use AI in this new segment on sustainability. And we also need a lot of support system, a lot of people who can digitize, who can automize, way beyond the way creating the sustainable environment. And I see a lot of scope there in terms of job availability and job creation in this field. And from the institution point of view, I think there's a lot of scope of creating specialized courses around this business. So I think these are my inputs. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Abhay. And I think very wonderful points that when you talked about how and what kind of skill sets students today need to embrace that will help them to create careers in sustainability area, which I will go back to the earlier point that Rajdeep had made, that it's not about careers in sustainability rather than making sustainable careers. And what's more important when we look at the situation today, we find the capacity of Earth to support life is declining with each passing day. And it's putting a pressure on us while we meet our own present demands. We have to be mindful of the future generation as well, that we should not be ignoring their ability to meet their needs in future while we continue to meet our own demands. So, which means the kind of skills, the competencies which are fundamentally important, they again go back to our value system. It's not about learning management practices, which is the tip of the iceberg. I think what is more important is where the tip is actually rooted, and it is rooted in our value system. And when I say value system, I again take you back to what our gurukuls, what our ancient education, what our many manuscripts, documents, and doctrines have talked from time to time. It's about our fundamental ability to empathize. It's our fundamental ability to respect, love, to coexist in a peaceful environment with others. It's more about being a seeker and being an inquisitive person. It's more about how we manage our anger, how we manage our lust, how we manage our greed. Because in last couple of centuries, this mismanagement of greed, lust, anger, envying each other it has taken world to a different dimension where today we are all talking about the subject. So as a student, you have a big responsibility. What we are giving to you today, you may be cursing us, but what you will pass on to the new generation, you need to be mindful that they should respect you for what you have given to them. And for that, you need to learn those skills which are fundamentally important as a human being, so that we can pass on right things to the next generation. With that, I have the opportunity of inviting Aarti Mittal. She is from Accenture, and she will be talking about some of the important aspects, especially some of the surveys that she has gone through and found out the relationship between what we do and how it is impacting the business, and what kind of skill sets today we need to embrace to make it more sustainable. So, Aarti, back to you. Thank you for coming here.
Good afternoon, everyone. And the reason I'm being a little loud with my good afternoon message is because I'm the last speaker today. And it has its both advantages and disadvantages. So thank you very much for having me here today. And I congratulate ILM for representing a forum like this, which is an opportunity for all of us. So thank you very much for having me here today. And I'm also thankful for being a sole representative of gender diversity on the dais. And so thank you for that as well. Hopefully next year when we organize the 8th session of PRME, we have 50% or maybe gender equality on the dais. And I sat through the first session as well. Professor Sanyal requested me to be here an hour earlier, so I said, okay. And that gave me a good advantage, opportunity to hear different speakers, Dr. Chatterjee, Mr. Kaushal from United Nations, Mr. Kamal Singh, and Mr. Khosla. So I think all the speakers here and earlier as well have said what I wanted to say. And honestly speaking, I did a lot of research. I worked hard to speak for these 8-10 minutes. But then I left those reports at my home today. And I thought, why not to go extempore with all of you? I'm not going to restrict what I'm talking here to the students only. It applies to all of us. We all are seekers, and that's the reason we are investing time today in hearing people talk. So thank you very much for being so attentive listeners today. So thank you very much for your presence. I was thinking probably this number would be 10-20% to who I would be talking to, but thank you. So, you might have heard this morning, I'll pick up threads from what people have talked about. Some questions to all of you. I don't like this one-sided communication. Please raise your hand and ask questions. Don't kill your questions at your level. What do you practice every day? So the subject here is jobs and opportunities. We have not come with a magic wand that we're going to move in the air and say, okay, here is the next jobs for us as millennials. We call this segment as millennials. And why? Because we think you're more capable than us. You're better exposed than us. We were more text savvy. You're more experienced. So your learning is more experiential. Ours was more textbook. And we picked up on-ground experience. And that's how we grew over a period of time. So what do you want your takeaway from this session today? Something that you want to take away from here when you go back today and think about it. And that's what I want to leave you with when I walk out of ILM campus this morning. There is a very famous adage from Mother Teresa, and it inspires me every day. It says, you as an individual, or I as an individual, cannot do anything. I'm not capable of doing anything. But the least that I could do is pick up a stone and throw it in the calm river and create those ripples. And that's what everyone is talking about. Every opportunity starts with you. That's you. You have to take that action of picking up that stone, throwing it in the river, and creating those ripples. So I'm doing it. So what I've seen is what people have talked about, World Economic Forum, the Davos session. And some of you must be questioning, what does it have to do with my getting a job? Nobody has given me a solution. Everyone is talking about sustain the climate. There were people from different countries who came as speakers and talked about, why sustainability of climate is important. People have come over here and talked about their experience about innovation, collaboration. Why these things are important? Because everyone is talking through their experience. We realized it. We as an individual come with limited capabilities. But when we collaborate with a larger group, we enhance our own capability, enhance the growth. And that's where people talked about network, reach out to people, whether directly or online. Mr. Sarawat talked about reach out online. Invest in yourself. When you stay invested in yourself, start thinking, how am I contributing today to my small world, to your own self? Start with your own self, be selfish. And then think about a larger group. Now, how can I contribute to a larger society that I'm part of? Your family, and then move out to the society. Then look at the company for which you work for, and then come to the society. So that's how you increase your circle of impact. That's how you create that ripple effect. Dr. Nehru talked about, constantly never maintain a status quo. Be agitated always. Challenge yourself. So I specialized in marketing. That was my major. Minor was information technology. And today what I'm doing, I'm not doing anything related to marketing, maybe IT, because IT is the industry that I decided to be part of. So today I am doing legal and finance, and I'm building robots. So I never ever imagined in my life that at one point in time, I would be designing robots and working on the solutions, which is more digital and artificial intelligence. Everyone is talking about it. So it comes to you naturally. IT, information technology, is a backbone to all the industries. So think from a subject matter expertise. Don't restrict yourself to one industry, or don't skill yourself in one area. Keep upskilling your capabilities. So think of being subject matter expertise to one industry. It could be manufacturing, it could be healthcare, it could be banking, it could be finance, it could be insurance, it could be anything that interests you or something that you're passionate about. Pick up that industry, choose that industry, become the SME, and then information technology is something that would automatically, fall into your way as you would steer through your career. Learn about data and analytics. Everything has to do with data. So the more smarter you are, the more patterns you start seeing in data, it's going to help you. It's everywhere. So it's about pick up your, when you do budgeting of your household budgets, you look at the consumptions, you look at your spends, and so on and so forth. So what you're doing is you're looking at the historical data, and you're doing predictive analysis. So the more strong you are with data and numbers, the more comfortable you become with technology. And this generation is, I think probably 5 years, 10 years down the line, the future that we are seeing is that the workforce that will survive, the bandwagon, would be the one who is comfortable working with robots. Robots is in thing. So you would have certain monotonous processes of any industry that I just talked about being managed by robots, and the creative element of the businesses is left to humans to manage. So, gone are the times where certain skills used to be to say it is only human skills, but today it's I think I would say it's historical. The redundant processes are being dealt by robots, And then you as humans should know how to manage these robots, plus adding those innovation on the top of your processes. So that's what is called innovation, sustainability, and reinventing the wheel all the time. Another thing that I think which is going to be another 5-10 years is the future. But honestly speaking, what we talked today, I was reading through some of the reports. Whatever predictions have been done for artificial intelligence, RPA, and other information technology sector, the growth has gone much beyond the predictions, almost by 17 to 18%, what analysts have predicted. So therefore, if we are standing here and predicting something, the growth pattern might be much, much higher than that. So in terms of my message to all of you is, just pick up any industry, understand the knickknacks of it thoroughly, from base or from ceiling to floor to ceiling, and study IT as a support. Don't take IT as your mainstream, because people who pick up only information technology or remain technology expert, they end up being in the back-end operations of the tech companies, as I have seen. But for you to be part of the main business mainstream, you pick up industry and then move on. So I think that's my message, but constantly keep thinking, what do you practice every day? Practice reading. Be a learner always. Because what you practice, you become good at it. What you practice every day, that's what I would say. So if you practice anxiety, you would become very good at practicing anxiety. Even to the extent when someone is talking to you, your brain has a tendency to bar you from listening to what the other person is saying and be constantly in that fear or anxiety mode. So it's your choice what you want to practice every day. Question yourself, what is it that I practice every day? What are my key differentiators? What are my areas of strength? So it's no longer, you work on your weaknesses and make them your strengths. It's like work on your strengths. You no longer have to work on your weaknesses. Work on your strengths and further strengthen them. And the only way to strengthen your strengths is by being a constant learner in those areas. So that's my message to all of you today, and please keep your questions ready and let it be a more interactive session. As we say, collaboration is very important, networking is very important. So let it start from here, from this room today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aarti. I think a very valid observation that you talked about, the thinking that we need to embrace, and especially I could recognize what you were trying to point out at is the diversity in thinking, including what you study, what you read, to be more interdisciplinary and have the larger perspective. I would again go back to our roots, to our culture, and this is something that I cannot compromise, because I think unless you focus on the bottom of you as an individual, we may not be able to do a sustainable behavior. And it always reminds me about the iceberg. And this iceberg is very important when we as human beings relate our behavior. Today, the entire shift has gone towards the tip of the iceberg, which is how we see each other, how we make our presentation, how we wear the clothes, how we speak. But most important is the mass of the iceberg, which is always hidden, which people don't see. And that is the value system. That is the more fundamentally important aspect. And when Aarti was talking about the diversity, it was reminding me of a very important shloka from our Rig Veda, which says, Krintova yantu vishvataha aryam, which is that let the noble thoughts come from all sides, and which is fundamentally important. If you recognize the purpose of this shloka, it is talking about how not only I value my own views, I also value the contrarian views, but noble thoughts. So how do you differentiate between the right thoughts and the not so right thoughts? That is a value that we were always taught. Like when you look at the global perspective, civilizations outside India, we had civilizations which talked about survival of the fittest. But we had the civilization which taught in India, which was Vasudeva Kutumbakam, where on the one side you had survival of the fittest, which means as long as you are powerful and you are controlling others, versus Vasudeva Kutumbakam, where it meant that everyone is part of the family. There is no strong or no weak. We have to treat everyone equal. And then we said, Sahana bhavatu, sahana bhunaktu, sahaviryam karvavahe, tejasvina maditamastu ma vidyashvadmahe. Means, Sahana bhavatu, sahana bhunaktu. Everyone, saha, everyone included. Everyone has to be included in that part. Whether rich or poor, whether healthy or unhealthy, whether men or women, children or big. Everyone has to be, it's an inclusive society, inclusive mindset that we have to develop. So fundamentally, if the values are right, I think the behaviors will be sustainable. And if the behaviors are sustainable, I think whatever you do, whichever career, whichever profession you will get into, you can make that workplace, that job, that department, that industry, that business sustainable. So I thank all the speakers who have come today. We have few minutes, and I'm opening it to questions from the students to any of the speakers here. So in next 5-7 minutes, if we are having a couple of questions to pick up, we'll be happy to take that up. Anyone has any question? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Sachin Mavi. I am from GL Bajaj, and my question is for Aarti ma'am. Most of the education institutes in India are more theory-oriented as compared to that of practical learning. Then I would like to ask how we are supposed to cope up with the new trends of practical learning happening in the globe.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
You're welcome.
So, thank you for your question. It's a very interesting question, and please, you may take your seat. So, I think it's a very thought-provoking question, and I would request all the members here on the dais, and ma'am as well, there to contribute to answer so that we do justice to your question today. But I can share my perspective as to what I think should be more inclusive. So we are talking about, I think there is a shift in the education now. It is no longer a textbook orientation. In fact, I was reading a report yesterday which says that Indian students need to have more STEM skills and a shift away from being textbook oriented to more experiential learning. I think it's picking up. We are on the right track. We are making changes to the reason we are here and doing these kind of conferences is to be the enablers to the changes to the programs that we are currently pursuing. And I think maybe there might be a time when in second year where we as students pursue our area of specialization, we pick up, whether we want to specialize in finance. The academic institutions have to do away with that sort of program, whereby it could be generalized, where all of us need to know everything, because that's the need. You cannot restrict yourself to one area. And industry collaboration is definitely helpful. So, and I'll pick up threads from Mr. Sarawat's discussion to say, have a mindset, be agile. These days the workforce needs to be agile. That means if someone is giving you an opportunity to work in the, let's say, legal department, and you have studied marketing, so just walk into that opportunity and experience, what sort of work you need to do, and learn. Don't fret from learning. As I said, invest in yourself. And investment, when I say investment, that means you learn, you read, be an avid learner, read the books. You have a good library there. And I was feeling so happy to see a physical library today as against the electronic books that we have got used to. So it's like no one else can, help you but you yourself. And education pattern is changing. Academic institutions are changing the way they used to inculcate the skills amongst the students. So the change wave is on. You may see apparently the results in 2 to 3 years down the line, but I think it's getting visible slowly.
Thank you, Aarti.
Thank you.
Any other question, anyone? Yes, please.
What about the opportunities that exist in technology, and we should not fear the future. You know, the whole emphasis during this entire discussion was on technology and data-based jobs, like the future holds those jobs. What about the other areas? Not everyone in this audience and the other audiences elsewhere is equipped to handle data, is comfortable with quantitative skills. What about those students? Like what the future holds for them?
So I think the point is that the jobs of the future will be underpinned by technology, right? Now, as you look at the value chain of any industry or a sector, there will be at one end of the spectrum will be jobs which will create technology. There will be other end of the spectrum people who will use technology, right? So the point which you're making is correct to some extent, that not everybody has quant skills or computational skills, but usage of technology in the job is going to become a non-negotiable, right? Obviously, there will be jobs which will not require technology, but we also underestimate our fellow citizens for the absorption of technology. For example, when smartphones were becoming mainstream, and after demonetization, when the Aadhaar-based payment system was launched, or the Bhim app was launched, or the UPI, the whole thing is, these poor guys can't use technology, but they are very comfortable. And that is what I'm saying, technology will underpin, but the role at various points in the value chain will differ. Again, I'll give you another example. Jobs will get created, so there will be, like I said, and I hate to use this word high-end and low-end, but there will be some high-end jobs and there will be some at the field level, right? But usage of technology, familiarity with technology, and I think this generation which is in the row behind you, whether they're sitting in a nice business school or they are in a not-so educational institute, are getting comfortable with technology. I don't know whether you use the metro, but if you sit in any metro carriage, because I'm a habitual metro user, everybody has a smartphone. Now today they're listening to songs, the YouTube, but they're comfortable with technology. That's the point I'm making. And like I said, there'll be different jobs across, and if you take the agriculture supply chain, there will be different jobs. There will be at the farm, there will be at the store, and in the middle there will be cold chains, etc., etc. But let us not fundamentally move away from this point that the jobs of the future will be underpinned by technology.
Thank you. I think that's a brilliant answer. I think
One point I
Yeah.
want to make, sorry. Then this is a point which Dr. Kalam once made to me, and I was sort of learning from him. He said the technology paradigm today is high-tech is for the rich and low-tech is for the poor. He says unless fundamentally this paradigm shifts, that high-tech is also for the poor and cost of technology comes down, which is happening today, there will be this inequity in the society. But today, 5 years back, a smartphone was 35, 40,000. Today, you can get a smartphone for 3, 4,000. So cost of technology is coming down, performance of technology is improving. So I think fundamentally, society is getting reshaped. So I won't worry too much about this.
Yeah, just want to add another point to what he said is there are some skills which are like must to have and there are some skills are like good to have.
Very
So
valid point.
this would become a must to have kind of a skill in near future. So I think your comfort with data and analytics has to be there.
Thank
So
you.
there's no
So
escapism.
there was a
Thank you.
question at the back. Someone had raised the hand.
Good
Yes.
afternoon, sir. My question for you, Rajdeep, sir, is that we are a generation which is in a phase of transition as of now because artificial intelligence is taking over. But along with that, we are not getting trained in that very particular. Skill. And also, most of the India, if you see that it is not really very educated in terms of making usage of the technology. So how do we make it more of user-friendly and how do we brace ourselves for the upcoming challenge that is lying in front of us? So
Your point is valid but you see again you need to have a mindset shift. Today AI is looked as a destroyer. But it is not a destroyer. Today AI is underpinning all the stuff we do in entertainment. So your YouTube, the choices you get, the Google Maps, everything is underpinned. But there we don't have a problem with AI, right? But today, you need to at least develop an understanding of what AI is. And today we are in the world of a weak AI. And let me tell you this, in another 20, 30 years, AI is going to marry with neurosciences, and you will see a very strong AI, where by 2045 it's predicted that the AI will mimic the human brain. So wait for that. That will be disruptive. Today is a weak AI. You know, it's very, so the point you're making is, how much effort have you done as an individual to read about AI and the positive aspects? I urge all of you, and note it down. There is a www.singularity.u. It's a Singularity University, which is co-founded by Deloitte and Google, and among some other people. It only looks at the future of tech. It's a futuristic, so it's not a physical university, but it's like a virtual university. You read some of their blogs, you read, and you will see the power of technology. You will move your mindset from it, you know, this threat perception that AI is going to destroy my life. It's not going to destroy your life. You need to develop an understanding. It's like, you know, somebody getting scared of a car. A car is a weapon or a convenience. You can look at it either way. So please, you know, all I'm saying is, don't get scared. Read about it. Which is your favorite sector for a job? So give me sales, right? So look at how AI can help you in sales, right?
Okay, so I would suggest students to interact during the break with all the speakers for your questions that you have. I must thank Rajdeep, Abhay, Aarti, and organizers for organizing the session. It was a lovely conversation that we had here this afternoon, and I hope we'll continue to have such debates in coming times as well. So thank you once again. And thank you everyone for being so cooperative in this conversation. Thanks.
I would now like to request Professor Saurav Sanyal and Professor Shyamali Satpathy, the session coordinators for this session, to felicitate the dignitaries on the stage. Professor Saurav. Professor Shyamali. A group photograph, please.